Agree.
Dear attendees and speakers, we are waiting for our chief guest to join us, and as soon as he's here, we'll officially start the seminar.
Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Honorable Chief Guest, esteemed partners and presenters, dear audience, I, Salman Shah, along with my co-host, Samra Siraj, extend my warmest welcome to you all at this international seminar on ecosystem restoration for quality of life. This seminar has been organized by the Akhan Agency for Habitat, an agency of the Akhan Development Network in partnership with the Ministry of Climate Change, Pakistan, World Habitat Awards, and UN Habitat to celebrate the World Environment Day 2021. The objective of this seminar is to raise awareness and instigate actions for environmental protection and conservation through a series of presentations and panel discussions by UN Habitat, Pakistan, and Acadian agencies, the Akhan Rural Support Program, Akhan University, and Akhan Agency for Habitat. We hope that the thought-provoking and insightful discussions will contribute towards knowledge sharing and further inspire people to promote restoration of ecosystem at their required scale. I would now request Mr. Nawab Ali Khan, the Chief Executive Officer of the Akhan Agency for Habitat Pakistan, to share his welcome remarks. Mr. Nawab has over 20 years of experience in habitat, climate change, environment, and community development. Under his dynamic leadership, AKA has introduced a range of innovative programs for the improvement of habitats, leading to improved quality of life in the coastal and mountainous areas of Pakistan. I would now hand over the virtual podium to Mr. Nawab Ali Khan for his welcome remarks.
Thank you, Salman. I hope you can hear me. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished guests, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. It's my utmost pleasure to welcome all of you to the webinar, Ecosystem Restoration for Quality of Life, jointly organized by Acadian institutions, Ministry of Climate Change, UN Habitat, and the World Habitat Awards is part of the official celebrations of the World Environment Day and the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. The seminar brings diverse experiences around ecosystem restoration through practical experiences from the high mountains to the coastal belts, rural settlements to urban centers. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's World Environment Day marked the beginning of the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. It reminded us that our ecosystem is in a state of emergency. Urgent and practical measures are critical now for the restoration of the world's ecosystem. Otherwise, we may reach to a point of no return. Each individual human being on planet Earth must play its role, its due role. Thanks to United Nations Environment Programme and the Government of Pakistan for highlighting this important issue. Honorable participants, please join me in congratulating the Government of Pakistan, the people of Pakistan, for successfully hosting this year's World Environment Day. The government has already set a direction for the decade of ecosystem restoration through practical actions such as the 10 billion tree tsunami and the Green and Clean Pakistan program. The Acadian is a proud partner of the Government of Pakistan, particularly with the Ministry of Climate Change on this journey. Acadian works in varied environments globally, ranging from the high mountains of Central Asia to the plains and coasts of South Asia and East Africa on a range of development programs. Our experience shows that care for the environment, care for the natural environment, respect for local culture, participation of local communities, and partnerships at all levels are key for sustainable development. We have learned that green approaches create new opportunities and improve quality of life. For decades, Acadian has invested and continues to invest in the development of parks, gardens, community-based tree plantation, environment-friendly buildings, and promotion of eco-friendly architecture. Besides their ecological value, our parks and gardens are visited by millions of people annually and are the source of livelihoods for thousands, contributing to local economies. Our clean energy projects benefit 10 million people globally. Going forward, Acadian is committed to zero energy operations for all its programs. Acadian has developed green building guidelines for its building projects, and we appreciate the opportunity provided by the Ministry of Climate Change, Government of Pakistan, to use Acadian's learning to support the government with the implementation of green building guidelines in Pakistan, together with UN Habitat and the National University of Science and Technology. The Khan Agency for Habitat has a major focus on environment and climate change. Planning and development of eco-friendly and safe human habitat is our key goal. Our water and sanitation extension program and building and construction improvement program in Pakistan received global recognition for their eco-friendly approaches and were awarded by prestigious awards, including the World Habitat Award, UN Habitat Award, Ashland Award, Elkan Award for Sustainability. akah.pakistan was also the winner of the prestigious World Habitat Award 2020 Gold category for its unique approach of addressing habitat issues through combining scientific and local knowledge. Acadian is committed to work with governments and all other partners to improve quality of life of the people through eco-friendly approaches, adopt a carbon net zero approach, and embark on new initiatives that will help restore our ecosystem. I'm thankful to all our partners globally and in Pakistan, including the Government of Pakistan, for their continued support to the work of the Acadian. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your participation. I would like to particularly thank the presenters and our partners, including UN Habitat for Pakistan, Ministry of Climate Change, and the World Habitat Awards for their great support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nawab, for your kind thoughts. It is a great honor for me to introduce and welcome the chief guest of this seminar, His Excellency Mr. Malik Amin Aslam, the Minister for Climate Change and Special Assistant to the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Mr. Malik merely requires any introduction though. He is well known for his long list of achievements for successfully mainstreaming climate change in the various sectors of Pakistan and to guide Pakistan towards climate resilient development. A renowned environmentalist, Mr. Malik deserves to be praised for his remarkable contributions in enabling Pakistan to advance several environmental conservation and protection initiatives, and thus building an international reputation of being a champion of climate change. Due to this global display of leadership, Pakistan has been assigned the responsibility to host this year's World Environment Day. Mr. Malik is also the key man behind the flagship Green Pakistan program and serves as a vice president in the International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN. Now we request our distinguished chief guest, Mr. Malik Amin Aslam, the Minister for Climate Change, to kindly address the gathering. Apologies, we have just received the update that Mr. Malik has been called for an urgent meeting by the President. So in his absence, I would request Mohammad Irfan Tariq, the Director General of Climate Change, to kindly address the gathering.
I hope you are. I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible. Kindly turn on your video too.
Yes. Video. Just 1 second, please. Sorry for this. I hope you can see me and you can hear me.
Yes, we can see you and we can hear you too. Please go ahead, Mr. Irfan.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, colleagues. My name is Irfan. I work for the Ministry of Climate Change. And I would like to, first of all, welcome you all to this very interesting virtual interaction. And would also like to thank specifically UN Habitat and Aga Khan Habitat Program for partnering with this ministry in organizing this event in celebration of World Environment Day activities. As you all know, this year's World Environment Day theme aligns with the theme of the ecosystem decade, which was also launched on the 5th of June this year. And the theme is ecosystem restoration. Pakistan had the honor of hosting the World Environment Day because of its activities and environmental agenda, which focuses on nature-based solutions and ecosystem restoration projects and initiatives, which you all must be knowing includes the 10 billion and billion and recharge and all other marine-related activities. The Ministry of Climate Change is honored to host this event in Pakistan. And I'm thankful to all partners who contributed to its success, especially UN Habitat and Aga Khan Foundation for their collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, all of you know that Pakistan is one of the countries impacted by the vulnerabilities of climate change. And The National Climate Change Policy indicates that urban planning and urban issues are central to this whole discussion. We presume that 70% of are from the urban areas, and there is equal opportunity to mitigate those greenhouse gas emissions and an equal opportunity to adapt this global rise in temperature. And these urban areas provide us with this opportunity. The Ministry of Climate Change has been working to pioneer initiatives in the urban sector, and the upcoming NDCs the government of Pakistan is going to submit will prominently reflect the urban sector. The Ministry of Climate Change has also initiated a Clean Green Pakistan initiative, Cities Index, which was implemented in 20 cities of KP and Punjab province during the first phase, and will be implemented all across Pakistan in its second phase. UN Habitat was a partner organization in that event also, and it has proven to be a great success because the basic objective was behavioral change, and the pioneering activities, thematic activities were within 5 sectors related to urban livability. The second initiative I just wanted to present before you, which we are partnering with Aga Habitat Program and UN Habitat, is the Green Building Code. The ministry is pioneering the development of Green Building Code. As of today, we have developed the guidelines, and we are going to pilot these guidelines in the Prime Minister's housing program. These guidelines were presented to the Prime Minister very recently, and now would be developed for in the PM's housing program. Similarly, the ministry is also in the final stages of developing a climate resilient urban development policy guidelines, which will be implemented all across the country and would provide policy recommendations for implementation in different ecological regions of Pakistan for adapting to climate change. I am thankful to all partners who have contributed to these initiatives and look forward to further partnering with relevant organizations. Minister for Climate Change, Malik Amin Aslam, who was to deliver his keynote, would join this event later because right now he is in a cabinet meeting.
On our next speaker, Mr. Rafael Talks, to share his kind thoughts. Mr. Rafael will.
So as soon as he reaches back, he would join this meeting. And at this moment, I thank you very much. Over to the moderator, please.
Once again, thank you so much, Irfan Saab. Now we will call upon our next speaker, Mr. Rafael Talks, to share his kind thoughts. Mr. Rafael works as a Director Program Division at the UN Habitat. He has rich experience in promoting compact, integrated, and connected cities that are inclusive and resilient to climate change. Mr. Rafael, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished representative of the Ministry of Climate Change, Chief Executive Officer of Aga Khan Agency for Habitat, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of UN Habitat, I'm honored to participate in today's seminar on ecosystem restoration for quality of life. Not only is this topic very relevant for the decade on ecosystem restoration that started on World Environment Day, it's also particularly important as the world battles the COVID-19 pandemic. Indeed, the world is in the middle of a dual crisis of climate change and the pandemic. Central to both the climate change issue and the outbreaks of pandemics is the process of urbanization. Land use change brought about by rapid and unplanned urbanization and expanding agriculture can encroach on natural habitats and ecosystems, and such changes can disturb the delicate web of life and become a driver of disease outbreaks. However, by ensuring that cities are well planned and compact, and through more sustainable patterns of consumption and production, we can reduce the conflict between human settlements and nature. Ladies and gentlemen, despite great progress made on the technological front, more than 1 billion people across the world do not have access to electricity and rely on wood or biomass to cook or heat their homes. More than 2 billion people lack access to water, and 3 billion lack basic hand-washing facilities. Indeed, had we made better progress on these basic services, the impact of the pandemic could have been mitigated. Simultaneously, we need to reduce pollution and roll back the degradation of ecosystems. More than 80% of sewage in developing countries is discharged untreated, polluting rivers, lakes, and the marine environment. Air pollution kills an estimated 7 million people worldwide every year. To heal ourselves and the planet, we need to urgently address these problems. Distinguished guests, UN Habitat launched the State of Pakistani Cities report in 2018, which highlighted state of critical urban environment conditions in the 10 largest cities of Pakistan. In this regard, UN Habitat congratulates the government of Pakistan on taking several initiatives, such as the Prime Minister's Clean Green Pakistan program, the 5 million housing program, and the 10 billion tree tsunami program. Commitments at such high levels of government is key, as is the leadership at the levels of fast-growing cities and towns in this country. I would also like to note that the Ministry of Climate Change developed this Clean Green Pakistan Index, which was applied initially in 20 cities and now expanded to 80 cities, where UN Habitat is pleased to serve as a third-party monitor to assess the progress on the ground by the selected cities. UN Habitat has also been working with the government to develop green building codes for the Prime Minister's 5 million Naya Pakistan housing program. These guidelines will ensure greenhouse gas emission reduction, resource efficiency in consumption and building materials, water, and energy use. Distinguished guests, from UN Habitat, we are also very inspired by the work of the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat. And we are very happy that the initiative of the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat in Pakistan has won the World Habitat Award this year. UN Habitat partnerships with the World Habitat Award started in 1987 as part of the United Nations International Year of Shelter for the Homeless. Every year since, UN Habitat have partnered with World Habitat to present the awards to the most innovative housing projects in the world, and we certainly look forward to further developing our collaboration. Ladies and gentlemen, in the area of waste management, UN Habitat Waste-Wise Cities Initiative now represents a collaboration between 200 cities across the world to improve waste management. On May 27th this year, our Executive Director, Ms. Maimouna Mohammed Sharif, launched the Waste-Wise Cities tool in Pakistan. This tool will enable cities to assess their waste management needs and develop investment proposals to tackle the problem of municipal waste management. UN Habitat's water and sanitation program works with cities and communities to improve access to water supply and sanitation. And through the Global Water Operators Partnership, we bring together water operators through peer-to-peer exchanges to improve the efficiency of water operators and their ability to better target the needs of the poor. And through our work on sustainable urban mobility, we provide technical assistance to improve public transport and facilities for walking and cycling, making the city accessible to all and reducing air pollution and carbon emissions. And finally, later today, my colleague Jose Chong will discuss the contribution of public space to ecosystem restoration and the quality of life. So I believe these few examples are very relevant now in battling the dual crisis of climate change and the COVID-19 pandemic. Distinguished guests, the past year has been difficult, but it has given us an opportunity to learn. In concluding, I'd like to quote United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, "Together, let's make peace amongst ourselves and with nature, tackle the climate crisis, stop the spread of COVID-19, and make 2021 a year of healing." I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Rafael, for your insightful remarks and appreciation. We are also proud to have World Habitat Awards as our partners. The World Habitat Awards are presented each year in partnership with the United Nations Human Settlement Program to recognize and highlight innovative, outstanding, and sometimes revolutionary housing ideas, projects, and programs from across the world. We request Mr. David Ireland, the Chief Executive Officer of the World Habitat Awards, to kindly share his remarks. Mr. David has rich experience of promoting sustainable development and innovation in housing, especially through collaborative research and knowledge transfer. Mr. David, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Samara, and thank you, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for the invitation today. I want to tell you briefly about why the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat's work in Pakistan is, in our view, one of the most important habitat projects in the world at the moment, and why it was successful in winning the Gold Award, World Habitat Award. World Habitat, the organization, is an international foundation, and we identify the world's best housing practice and help transfer it to where it is needed most. For the past 35 years, as Raf indicated earlier, we have operated the World Habitat Awards in partnership with UN Habitat. World Habitat is a separate organization and independent of UN Habitat, other than the World Habitat Awards, where we work in partnership. Every year, we shortlist about 200 submissions from all around the world on many projects connected to housing and habitat. Each year, there are 2 gold winners, one from the global north and one from the global south. The award is presented to projects that are innovative, transferable, and sustainable, and help solve the world's most pressing habitat issues. Pakistan projects have a fantastic record in the competition, in recent years having won 2 gold awards in the last 3 years. The previous one was presented to the Pakistan Heritage Foundation by President Arif Alvi in an event in November last year for a low carbon cooking stove called the Pakistan Chula. Pakistan is one of the countries well known for being the most affected by the climate emergency. When I first had the privilege of visiting Pakistan shortly after the Indus Valley floods in 2010, where an extraordinary 20 million people were affected. Sadly, that has not been the last, and there have been many more climatic disasters which have affected the country, and there will no doubt be many more in the future. Pakistan is uniquely vulnerable because of its geography. Glaciers, deserts, large rivers, and its coastal aspect means it is susceptible to landslides, floods, droughts, and cyclones. Many of the places most affected have large populations of people. Responding to the climate emergency is the major housing issue of our time. Globally, it is estimated that housing creates 1/3 of all greenhouse gas emissions. And whilst concerted efforts mean it is not too late to avoid the worst of climate change, it is too late to avoid any consequences. Millions of people around the world are already at risk from extreme climate events, and that number will increase in the coming years. Frequently, it is the poorest people living in the most marginal areas who are affected the most and affected first. Integrating indigenous knowledge and technology for safer habitat, the project that was awarded the World Habitat Award this year, is an approach set up by the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat in Pakistan in 2004. It combined science, new technology, and communities' local knowledge to create an early warning system, alerting people to floods. It informs people about planning and improving their homes so that they can be built in safe places and constructed safely so they can withstand the effects of natural disasters. The hazard risk assessment process has happened already in over 700 settlements in gilgit-Pakistan, potentially saving thousands of lives and providing a fantastic model which shows how people can live safely in a rapidly changing and riskier world. It is perhaps because Pakistan is so at risk that it is providing such a rich innovation on how to mitigate the consequences of the climate emergency. I want to congratulate Aga Khan Agency for Habitat and looking forward to working with them in the future and when we get the opportunity to present the trophy to them in the near future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. David, for your kind words. Before moving forward with today's agenda, we would request our honorable guests and esteemed partners, presenters to kindly turn on their cameras for a group photo. At the same time, I would request the communication team to take the photo.
We would request IT to kindly signal us when the photo is taken, please.
Yes, please. We will inform you. Just 1 more seconds.
Sure. I think we should all smile towards the camera.
Thank you very much.
For a while.
Photo. Samra, we can continue.
Thank you so much. Up next, we have an exciting video which will take you to some of the remotest parts of the world and give you a glimpse of some ecosystem-based interventions there. For this, I would kindly request the filmmaker, Andrew Cash, to kindly introduce the video and then screen it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Honored Pakistani officials, ministers, scientists, ladies and gentlemen. I can continue, I assume. You can see my video, right? We all know how dire the situation is for the 240 million people living at the roof of the world impacted by disastrous consequences of climate change, and for the 2.4 billion people downstream dependent on the waters coming out of the glaciers at the roof of the world. But how many people realize the natural treasures that would be lost if current trends continue? For decades, Western documentary film companies have brought these images of Marco Polo sheep, snow leopards into Western living rooms. And for that reason, people had a much higher awareness of some of the natural treasures that exist around the world. In the countries of Central Asia, South Asia, those images were rarely shown. So it's no surprise that most people, especially in rural communities, do not have the same warm, fuzzy feeling about wildlife as we do in the West. So they may see the wildlife, in fact, as threatening their livelihoods because of competition with livestock or farming. But that is now changing, as I'm well aware. There is a new generation of young people in all countries of Central South Asia who are just as aware and just as committed to the wildlife as their counterparts in the West. And they are the people who should be supported. So how can we as an institution, the Aga Khan University, Aga Khan Fund for Habitat, Agency for Habitat, the University of Central Asia, Aga Khan Foundation, how can we help to spread that message and support these young people? So the project that I'm about to describe, it's called Voices from the Roof of the World. It's a new video project that is funding young filmmakers to actually look at these problems, especially on the natural world, and then to organize a film series that will be broadcast in the region's television stations. The two trailers I'm about to show, both were made by a young filmmaker from Islamabad, Abdullah Khan, and they are looking at both the risk to wetlands and what is happening downstream from the roof of the world, and to the Himalayan brown bears at the roof of the world as the climate changes. Along with 20 other filmmakers in the region, Abdullah has responded to our call for funds and has produced these beautiful videos. They will be part of the series that will help prod governments, communities, and people in the region to fight for the natural resources and to fight for the region's biodiversity. Voices from the Roof of the World is not an abstract concept. It is actually launched. We have a website, we have films in production, and hopefully we will premiere in September. But mostly Voices from the Roof of the World is a chance to give voice to the region's young filmmakers, environmental filmmakers, and help them save the precious wildlife and environments that you're about to see. Thank you.
Deosai Plateau in northern Pakistan, a place of dazzling beauty and biodiversity, brimming with wetlands feeding rivers of life. It is also a rare refuge for the critically endangered Himalayan brown bear. But this corner of the roof of the world is now drying up.
काफ़ी सालों से हम ये अंदाज़ा कर रहे हैं कि यहाँ पे मौसम काफ़ी चेंज हो रहा है कि यहाँ पे जो है ना वक्त पे बारिशें नहीं होती है.
The marmots and plants that sustain the bears are now disappearing, along with the tranquil life of mountain communities. People and wildlife are now on a collision course.
हम उस पोजीशन में तो रहते ना कहीं ये ना हो कि कहीं सुटोड़ फाड़ दे खुराक की तलाश में.
A parched planet affects both bears and the resilient people of Gilgit-Baltistan.
वो चश्मे भी खुशक हो गए. 2-4 चश्मे तो ऐसे हैं वो वहाँ तो बिल्कुल आता ही नहीं. पानी नहीं है तो आबादी कहाँ से लाए?
Can these isolated communities and the region's largest mammal cope with climate change?
interesting video. Now we will move to the thematic presentations. There will be 4 presentations of 15 minutes each. These will be followed by a question and answer session. Attendees are requested to post their questions in the chat box. We would also like to inform you that this session will be recorded and can be accessed through akah's social media platforms. Now we'll move with our first presentation, and the first presentation would be on ecosystem restoration for quality of life, high mountain experience by Ono Rule, the General Manager of the Akah Agency for Habitat Global. Ono Rule is the first General Manager of Akah Agency for Habitat. Mr. Ono has previously held leading positions in the World Bank for several years. He has long-standing reputation for driving organizational change, building partnerships, as well as experience in disaster preparedness and response. Now, I would request Mr. Ono to kindly deliver his presentation.
Thank you, Saman. And if it is also possible for a test to launch the PowerPoint presentation, I first of all want to apologize for the fact that my virtual background doesn't work. So you're going to have to do with my real background. Your Excellency, Mr. Malik Amin Aslam, through his representative, the Director General, Mr. Rafael, Director of Program, UN Habitat, Mr. Dave Ireland, CEO, World Habitat Awards, colleagues from the AKDN, as well as President Hafiz Shirali. It's really a great honor and pleasure to be here on the occasion of World Environment Day, particularly partnering with the government of Pakistan, UN Habitat and the World Habitat Awards. Pakistan is a leading player for environment, has really made tremendous strides, and we're very proud to work with the government of Pakistan at various levels, including in Gilgit-Baltistan, where we just saw the beautiful video. So we can go to the next slide. I wanted to build on what was in the video, because the theme of the day is restoring ecosystems. And many people who think about restoring ecosystems think about restoring biodiversity, and that is of course correct, whether these are animals or plants. Very few people, however, realize that mankind itself is part of the biodiversity of this planet. People talk about saving the planet. Our challenge actually is to work to keep a balance between mankind and nature, humanity and nature, that will allow humanity to survive on this planet. Because the planet will surely survive. It existed for billions of years before humanity was even around. So there's a lot of awareness around this, and people talk especially about coastal areas, but in the AKDN, and particularly the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat, I want to focus today on mountain ecosystems. Why? Well, first of all, because the mountain ecosystem of which Pakistan is part, northern Pakistan, the Himalaya, Karakoram, Hindu Kush, Pamir mountain range, is of course the largest and highest mountain range in the world, but not everybody realizes that it is also the third large concentration of ice in the world. The first largest are of course Antarctica and the North Pole. And people talk a lot about biodiversity in Antarctica, referring to penguins, and biodiversity on the North Pole, referring mostly to the polar bear as the iconic species. But the big difference with the Himalayas is that the Himalayas, first of all, are directly important because they are the source of water supply for nearly 2 billion people, all the way from Afghanistan to China and Vietnam, and everything in between. Most definitely, Pakistan is very dependent for its water, as the film just emphasized. And this is important because of the huge impact of the mountains downstream. However, it is also important because humanity lives in those mountains, and humanity, the hardy people of Gilgit-Baltistan, as it was referred to in the film, but there's of course also Chitral and many other areas. We work particularly also in Afghanistan and Tajikistan in similar areas. These people are living directly on the front lines of climate change. And our challenge is to find a way to help them, not just keep living there, but actually do well while they live there, because we cannot, as humanity, have a strategy for climate change that shrinks human habitats and thinks of everybody moving to cities. The Director General already emphasizes 70% of people already live in cities. We can't keep concentrating that way because there simply won't be enough space, and many cities themselves are under threat. So that is why our traditional work in the northern areas and in Afghanistan and Tajikistan at the AKDN is now squarely rooted in the concept of helping restore the ecosystems, the balance between humanity and ecosystems, and through that, allow humans to adapt to climate change. Let's go to the next slide. Of course, I don't need to tell you, most of you know, mountains are on the front line of climate change. Temperatures are rising 3 times faster in the mountains than in any other area. Despite that, it's still an extremely harsh environment to live, and there's high poverty in mountains because it is difficult to make a living in mountains, in mountainous areas in most parts of the world. Mountains also for long have been exposed to high levels of natural hazards, and this is a direct threat to the community. Unfortunately, climate change has really worsened that threat. Both the frequency and the intensity of natural hazard risk has increased tremendously because of everything related to the instability of essentially water, because many of the hazards that are there in mountains are linked to water through either glacier melt, rock flows, mud flows, floods in summer, and all the other areas that can threaten people. And lastly, mountains are areas with poor infrastructure, simply because it is very difficult to build infrastructure and very expensive to build infrastructure in mountains, and also because of the extreme scarcity of buildable land that is safe in mountainous areas. There's a lot of land, most of it is not good to build on, but of course, the pressure of increasing populations creates a tendency for both homes and infrastructure to be built in areas where it is not safe. And this is a big driver of risk, and one we particularly focus on in the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat. Let's go to the next slide. So what do we try to do about it? And this is linked to David Ireland's kind and much appreciated presentation of the reasons why the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat Pakistan received the World Habitat Award. Our goal as AKDN, in particular of the Aga Khan Agency of Habitat, is to allow people to live in a safe, sustainable, and resilient habitat so that they thrive. What we like to say is that in the past, we focused on risk mapping and understanding risk so that people could survive in their community. But now we realize that that is not enough, because they need to survive in a way that is good and that allows them to escape poverty over time. And therefore, we don't just want to plan for people to survive, very important as it may be, but actually for them to do well, to thrive. So how do we do that? First of all, we use the risk mapping skills that we traditionally have and the modeling skills. And we do all of this in strong partnership with government and a range of other partners, UN Habitat being one of our principal partners at global level. To assess the habitat where people live, to, based on that plan, where necessary, think about relocation and understand long-term risks and climate change, so that we have a scientific base to understand what we're dealing with in this habitat. We then, after having done the scientific work to allow us to plan, work with communities, because the bread and butter of the Aga Khan Development Network is our close link with the communities we work with for many decades. So, as we've always done, we work with these communities so that they themselves understand the risk, are prepared, mobilize volunteers in the community to be ready to respond, where necessary, build habitat risk mitigation, universally try to reduce the carbon footprint, because although it is certainly not the communities in the high mountains of the Himalayas who cause climate change, nobody has a choice anymore but to figure out how to reduce carbon footprint, because all of us need to do this. And do this in a way that also uses for risk mitigation where necessary and where possible as I will show in some examples, what we call eco-DRR, physical ways to use the ecosystem to reduce hazard risk. And then based on having planned and prepared the community for and prepared with the community, we then do our work. So we work to make sure that housing and critical infrastructure, as I said, is built in the right location, taking into account long-term risks, and do that in a way that constitutes green construction, a very important aspect, that makes sure that essential municipal services are available, in particular water and sanitation, and where possible, use nature-based solutions. In Pakistan, we do this in more than 700 settlements. In the South and Central Asia region, it is 2,400 settlements. We monitor 15 glacial lakes on a continuing basis, have 88 weather monitoring posts throughout the region, which complements the globally available and locally available weather data, and have 40,000 community volunteers in these communities, 40% of whom are female. We have built water and sanitation systems according to WHO standards for more than 600,000 people in northern Pakistan, and we're very proud to be working with the government of Gilgit-Baltistan to rapidly expand access to water and sanitation in Gilgit and Hunza districts, and hopefully further afield also. And we've built many homes, hospitals, schools, and community centers, and we're currently working on long-term habitat planning activities in more than 100 cities, towns, and villages. Because we do, in fact, also work in Karachi and Hyderabad in Pakistan, and also in Mumbai in India, and in Dushanbe in Tajikistan. We can go to the next slide, please. Now, just a few examples of what we do in Pakistan. So first of all, the Director General and our colleague from UN Habitat already mentioned the 10 billion tree tsunami. And this is a very important program for us. We are honored to work with the government of Gilgit-Baltistan on the tree planting, particularly in Gilgit-Baltistan itself. And our contribution is to support the government program with two main aspects. One is to use solar techniques to provide the irrigation where that is necessary for tree survival in the short term. And secondly, to work on site selection so that trees can be planted where they have a maximum positive impact on hazard and vulnerability risk from a natural disaster perspective. And of course, we use the AKDN's community organization capability to involve communities to help trees survive. Because people talk a lot about planting trees. In fact, you need trees to survive for a minimum of 10 years to meet the climate change impact of only one tree. Let's go to the next example. I mentioned glacier monitoring. I want to single out the Shishpur Glacier. This is a glacier that threatens central Hunza. It's a glacier that actually surges as a consequence of climate change. This has been in the press both in Pakistan and internationally recently. Not well known to many people that glaciers that melt can actually surge because essentially the bottom of the glacier gets lubricated and therefore it moves forward. This, in the case of Shishpur, has created many threats, an unstable lake, and just the glacier advancing rapidly to the villages downstream. We have worked to have early warning systems. We worked with the government and the army to understand how and actually build protective structures. We, at the times, working with the authorities, including very recently evacuated families when the floods happened. It's still a very dangerous situation, and the Karakoram Highway has been cut off several times by the effects of this glacier. But so far, working with volunteers in the community, the government, and our own agency, we have managed to create a situation where there have not been any casualties as a consequence of this tremendous risk. It's really something we're proud of, but also something we're watching on a daily basis because of the danger. Let's go to the next slide. I mentioned, have built many water and sanitation programs. One big problem with water and sanitation programs is the sanitation at the end of it creates a problem because, of course, the refuse that is produced needs to go somewhere. And in Murtazabad, which is in Hunza district, we have in fact created a sewage management system with treatment plants. And we are experimenting now with planting trees where the waste collects, because these trees can act as a natural filter. So you get more than double bang for your buck. The trees are good for climate change. They do very well because of where you plant them, and they actually clean the environment. And this is, of course, something that can be done on a community-driven basis. We think this is working very well. If it keeps working very well, we'll roll out this approach across the region as one of the tools in our toolkit. Let's go to the next slide. Now, I wanted to share with you an example from Tajikistan. Andrew mentioned the snow leopard. This issue of ecosystems and the balance between humanity and the ecosystem is very important. And one way to look at that, we looked at the bears in Deodar in the film, is to look at iconic species and realize that when iconic species end up in conflict with humans, it means that the balance between humanity and the ecosystem is not right. And you need to work to improve it to get a better long-term results. And this is why we're working in Tajikistan on a cutting-edge program to understand the interaction between snow leopards and humans, and to work to preserve snow leopards in a way that also allows humans to have a better life. Because we believe that restoring ecosystems, including iconic species like the snow leopard, is at the very heart of achieving the goal of the work on environment and climate change, and therefore something we wanted to highlight on the occasion of World Environment Day 2021. And if we can go to the next slide, all that is left for me to do is to thank you for your very kind attention, and to thank our partners, the government of Pakistan, UN Habitat, World Habitat Awards, and the Aga Khan Foundation once again for working with us in this seminar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ono, for this informative presentation. Next, we would invite Javed Ali Khan and Jose Chong from the UN Habitat. Jose will present on ecosystem restoration for quality of life, experiences of urban areas. Mr. Jose works at the Global Public Space Program of the UN Habitat. He leads the development of new tools for public space assessments and citywide strategies. Javed Ali Khan is a UN Habitat lead from Pakistan and has been working very closely with the Ministry of Climate Change on some really crucial climate-related programs. We welcome Mr. Jose and Mr. Javed for their presentations. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Maybe I can start, Javed, or you start first?
Yeah, I am. You can start because I will just be by your side.
Okay, thanks a lot, and thanks a lot for the opportunity to the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat, the Ministry of Climate Change in Pakistan, and the World Habitat Awards for organizing this very relevant event. And I will discuss mainly about the public and green space contribution to ecosystem restoration and quality of life. And I think this presentation will be aligned a lot with my previous speaker, related to the importance of humanity, humans, and the interaction with environments. I wanted to highlight, and actually on the occasion of these events and the World Habitat World Environmental Day, is that the publication Ecosystem Restorations Playbook, and actually they identify like a 7 ecosystems, and one of them is urban ecosystems. And I wanted to highlight the importance of urban ecosystems when we are talking about ecosystem restoration. Only as an introduction, UN Habitat, we have a rough tools to discuss a little bit of our priorities. And I would say mainly that is from the United Nations, is related to cities. We have 2 main global agendas that we are following. That is the Sustainable Development Goals. And I wanted to highlight that we have one specific goal that is related to cities, and this is very important. But it correlates with a lot of goals that are related with climate. The other one that is very important for us is the New Urban Agenda. This is an important agenda because it defines the agenda of how cities will improve for the next 20 years. This was signed in Quito, in Ecuador in 2016. And actually, now local governments and national governments together with partners are working, for instance, to improve the importance of public space, to improve resilience in cities for natural disasters. The last thing that I wanted to highlight is the award specifically from UN Habitat. We just had a restructuring, and we have the strategic plan, the domain of change 3, that particularly talk about the strengthen climate action and improve urban environment. So this is why Habitat is putting climate action as one of the priorities in the relation actually with human settlements. I wanted to highlight two indicators that is part of the SDG process, the SDG 13 that is related to climate action, and the SDG 11 that is related to cities. And actually, Raf also mentioned that it's a COVID-19 pandemic has certain implications for both. I wanted to have these statistics that despite the inactivities or the of all the measures that happened during COVID-19 on, for instance, to try to stop certain social gatherings, we are still short of the 7% annual reduction on greenhouse emissions that is required to limit the global warming by 1.5 Celsius. So this is quite important to highlight. And also to stress that we still have 24% of people living in slums conditions. No, Raf also mentioned a lot of statistics regarding how difficult it's still for people to live in cities. And also that is 90% of the COVID-19 cases happen in urban areas. So this is quite important to work when we're talking about environment, also to work in urban ecosystems. But we have identified also that nature-based solutions are quite important when we are talking about, for instance, the importance of public space for quality of life. But we have to think about environment. For example, a public space contribution are related to increased carbon sequestration. But also, we have to think about the social dimension, how the people enjoy the public space. So we need to create streetscapes, urban green space, for the enjoyment of the people, and also to make awareness of the importance of the environment and for the quality of life. But also we have to think about the economic impacts. My previous speaker was talking a lot about livelihoods. So it's how, for instance, the construction based on nature-based solutions can reduce the hard infrastructure and reduce the construction cost. And that is related to urban planning, because actually, if you have a property next to a park or next to a green environment, it will increase the land values. And this can be captured through local governments, actually to finance and to maintain green public spaces in cities. But also it's there is some contributions regarding the improved habitats in general and through certain specific strategies. So I wanted to highlight here only a couple of examples related to nature-based solutions for urban ecosystem restoration. And I wanted to highlight one effect that we have identified that is quite important when we are talking about cities, that is the urban heat island effect. So it's basically what is happening, the temperatures in cities are higher than the environment that they are. And this is because of the way that the cities are designed and the way that we use energy. But this is affecting mainly the people living in vulnerable conditions, the people living in slums, for instance. So this is quite important, to also to change also the design of the city. And it's we have seen that, for example, greening and incorporating trees in the layout of the city can reduce the surface temperature by 5 to 20%. So this is quite important of the contribution of greening the urban environments. For instance, when we are talking about flood control, it's artificial river banks can actually increase the flooding risk. So for instance, in the graphic also you can see how you can use nature-based solutions to have a natural corridor. but also that can be used as a public space. So it's also a place like for enjoyment like of the population. So it's like you have like this double gain when we are talking about nature resolution and to improve the green public space system in your city. But also we have like some benefits like related to biodiversity, and we are talking about urban biodiversity. So there are some strategies like for example, the use of rooftops, but also like to connect the system of open spaces that you have in your city. We are talking about blue corridors, green corridors, and how is like the work that we are doing is mainly like to connect like these public space systems in order like to facilitate these biological corridors in our urban ecosystems. To summarize on this part, it's important when we are talking about the connection about public space, green public space and cities, that we have to go to scale. So it's like we have like the connection between urban and peri-urban, and my previous speakers were highlighting a lot about the importance of the general urban environment, and we call it like urban and rural linkages. So that this is something that we are aware. But also on the construction of the city itself, like the urban environment and the relation with the building design, but also when we are entering like to the human scale, talking about public and green spaces. No, so this is fundamental. And I wanted to highlight here because it's like actually with UN Habitat, we are working a lot on engagement communities through participatory processes on the co-design of the public space. This is fundamental. And also on the co-management of the public space. So it's like we have seen that more successful projects are actually the ones that we involve the communities and can bring lasting changes and improvements. So it's like a guarantee, like a sustainability on the quality of the public space. What is happening with the world? Some statistics here, like, and we have one specific SDG related to public space, to provide universal access to safe, inclusive, and accessible green and public space, particularly for women and children, older persons and persons with disability. But what we have seen globally is a reduction of the amount of open public spaces and streets. And this is related to urban development. So, and also what we have seen that there is a lot of inequalities on the accessibility to open and green spaces around the world. In average, we have that only around 50% of the world population living in cities has access to an open space in the 4 meters walking distance to the place of residence. So this is something that we have to increase. And also we have seen that there is a lot of inequalities to access to these open spaces, but also in the quality and conditions that we have like at these spaces. So from Habitat side, we are working, we have the Global Public Space Program. I am working with a program like since 2012. And basically what we are doing is supporting local government and national government like, to improve policies on public spaces in general in cities. And we go like from specific implementation projects like to all national urban policies regarding public space. I will show you 3 examples, mainly on our work. First of all, I will start like with Donghu Greenway in Wuhan, China. I think everyone is aware of Wuhan now. Before we have to explain about Wuhan. And actually, this is quite interesting project. We have started before the pandemic on a program that is called People-Oriented Public Space. Because the Wuhan government realized the importance to connect people and nature and urban development. So it's like this connection, and it's like we have worked with them, for instance, like to analyze the quality of public spaces in 2 districts in Wuhan. We have worked with them in participatory urban design processes using games as Minecraft through the block by block methodology, like to guarantee that the voice of the communities are related to the design of the public space. We have worked, for instance, on placemaking activities and through the placemaking week, etc. But in this particular project, and this is the way that we started, is like the rehabilitation of the Donghu Greenway that is related to a lake. Wuhan have plenty of lakes. And actually what's quite interesting, the strategy that they manage is like they have different strategies For instance, like on the relation of the greenway with the lake, the relation with existing agricultural fields, the relation with the forest, and also in the some hills that they have near the lake. As a result, for 2015 and in 2 years, basically they improved the amount of tourists going like to this lake, but also this was related to job creation and improvement of local economy around the lake. And this was quite fundamental, but also like to improve the quality of life of people like through activities of this space that before used to charge a fee like to enter, and then it was like a for free to everyone to access. But also in ecological restoration, basically they increased the number of trees like by 53,000, and also, for instance, like they took out like 10 kilometers of motorways, and also they rehabilitated 34 kilometers of the shoreline with improved quality of the water itself. Second example, and we go to Latin America, and this, I will go to Cancun, Mexico, and this equity park. And actually Cancun is quite an interesting example because it's well known as a place for people to go on vacations, on holidays, because it's next to the beach. But also they have a very important ecosystem of underground water and also of lakes in the whole region. But also it's one of the cities that is very unequal in access to services. So basically, like through the Mexico office, we partner with the subnational government of Quintana Roo through the Strategic Projects Agency in the improvement of the 16-kilometer lineal park in Cancun. This is quite important. It's like we have analyzed the master plan. It's a project of 20 years, to improve the condition of this lineal park, but also how to integrate the ecological corridors that they have in the city. Some examples, something that was quite interesting is like how in the urban design of the green park, they were integrated like the existing environmental preconditions. For instance, topography, the orientation, the existing vegetation, the environmental risk. And it's like, for instance, like you can see the section where you have like this specific ecosystem that is related to underground cave systems that are connected, and it's like they were integrated to the urban design. The other component that was quite important is like they did it like through a participatory process that is guaranteeing the management of the public space and the sustainability of the project in the long term. I will end up with this case study in Kabul, Afghanistan, so closer to Pakistan. And actually this was quite interesting. This started as a program, as a part of the Afghanistan Urban Safety and Security Program. So they asked us like to do a mapping or an audit, a safety audit of public spaces in the city. What we did is a contribution of assessing the quality of open public spaces, but also we incorporated the streets. And we realized due to the weather conditions that actually one of the recommendations was the climate sensitive public space design. So it's like we identified all the areas that has like some potential for ecological corridors in the city, and including, for instance, streets. So it's like at the end, as a part of the recommendations was like to repurpose the streets, to protect the aquifer, to link ecological restoration, and also with the conservancy of like historical buildings that they have in the city. So it was quite interesting, like how like from more the safety perspective, like we move like more to a climate action activities related to green public space and the system of public space in Kabul. To end up like the presentation, and this is my final slide, I am also taking the recommendation like from the ecosystem restoration playbook. And actually they are pointing out 3 recommendations. They call it rewarding approaches, and I advise like to also like to colleagues like and to the audience like to see the recommendations of the publication. They are highlighting green public spaces, and this is the same thing that we are that I discussed during the presentation. The importance to have green public spaces for ecosystem restoration is fundamental. Also to engage the citizens for sustainability. This is something that we have realized, like on all these years working with public space upgrading, like we need to involve the community to feel ownership of the process and also to manage public space. And we can start small. We can start with the small actions, with micro interventions that can start with your home, but then to leverage like to the city level, the neighborhood, the city, and also to the overall nation. So thanks a lot.
Want to say something? Okay, thank you so much, Jose, for the nice presentation. And before we move into our next presentation, I would request all the attendees to post their questions in the text, in the chat box. We will try to accommodate your questions within the given time. Now let's move to the next presenter. Dr. Asad Ali, Professor, Aga Khan University, Pakistan, will present some of the exciting field experiences of ecosystem restoration from the coastal areas of Pakistan. Dr. Asad is the Associate Dean of Research at AKU Medical College. His research interests pertain broadly to pediatric public health of developing countries. Dr. Asad, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you guys see me? Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I hope you all can.
Yes, we can see you now. Go ahead,
please. Thank you very much, everybody. So I am Asad Ali. I am a professor of pediatrics and child health at the Aga Khan University. As I begin, I first want to acknowledge the Ministry of Climate Change, Government of Pakistan, the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat, the UN Habitat, for arranging this. And I'm very happy to share the project that we are involved with over here. You guys can see my slides, right? So what I am going to be telling...
Dr. Asad, we can't view your slides as of yet.
Oops, wait. Let's see. Can you see it now?
No. I think it's going to take some time. It says it has started screen sharing. Has started.
Okay, let's give it a little bit of time then and see.
We have slides now.
I would also request IT to coordinate. Yeah, perfectly. We can view it now. Please go ahead.
Wonderful. Thank you, folks. Grateful for this opportunity to present here. So I am going to be talking about a project that we are very excited about and are engaged in Sindh, in rural Sindh, which relates to moringa plantation in here. As I mentioned, I'm a professor of pediatrics and child health, and I work at the Aga Khan University Medical College in Karachi, Pakistan. So this project that I'm going to be telling you about is basically titled Large Scale Moringa Oleifera Tree Plantation in Rural Sindh and its impact on childhood malnutrition. This is a project that is funded by the Prince Sadruddin Aga Khan Fund for Environment, and I'm grateful for to the sponsors for supporting it. So what is moringa? So many of you probably already know about moringa. It is also kind of considered one of the superfoods or a miracle tree. The tree is remarkable such that it is indigenous to our part of the world. The tree originated in what is currently basically the Indus Valley or the Sindh area, and it has some extraordinary nutritious properties. If you see this, and it is proven basically one big challenge of our part of the world, and the reason why 38 out of every 100 children in Pakistan are chronically malnourished or stunted is the quality of the diet that they have. So they have, they have very monotonous diet, such that they have wheat and rice as their staple food. And then they eat roti or chapati, basically with onions, with pickles and all. So it fills their belly, but the diet is very poor in proteins and all. Moringa was a tree that was indigenous to our part of the world. This is where it originated. But then over the past about 60, 70 years, its use has radically declined in here, such that the current generation is not aware of the nutrition and the health benefits of this and is not using it in their diet. But now, with increasing awareness in the West and rest of the world, this is now coming back for us in use. So moringa has 2 times the protein, pound for pound, what is in yogurt, 3 times the potassium in bananas, 4 times the calcium in milk, and 4 times the vitamin A in carrots. So if you see this, every part of this tree or plant is kind of edible. So the leaves are rich in protein, rich in antioxidants. You can use these basically the leaves as they are, cook them like a vegetable or make a powder of them. And that again has very concentrated proteins and these antioxidants in it. The flowers are very rich and are used in diet. The pods are used, the roots are used, the seeds you can create, you can get oil of them. And then the seeds and the can also be used for water purification and all. So what we found was that we thought that this is a resource where moringa plantation could be a great solution for both our environmental challenges, because this tree, given that it is native to our part of the world, especially in Sindh and southern Pakistan, it grows well in semi-desert or sandy areas, which is much of the lower Sindh and Balochistan and even southern Punjab area and all. And so doing this would help us in terms of the environment, as well as as an added pull for the people to adapt this. It has all these nutritional and medicinal benefits of it. So we did this big, you can call it a pilot, but it's a bigger than pilot. We started, the place we work is in the Matiari district of Sindh, which is kind of in the center of Sindh in here. And we selected councils of the district of Matiari, where we committed. Our objectives in this was to do moringa trees plantation in the community. And then what we wanted was real-time assessment of successful plantation. Just planting trees is not enough. We want to have a pull or a demand of these trees in the community so that people own them and utilize them and protect these trees. And then we wanted to do the impact assessment of these plantation on the community and environmental levels. So as I mentioned, the project is to do this plantation in 4 union councils of the district of Matiari. We are to plant 40,000 moringa trees over the 2 years. The first phase of plantation was from May 2020 to December 2020, because this is the time, this is the kind of the season where the plantation works. It doesn't quite work in the peak winter season in here. And then the phase 2 plantation started from 15th of February onwards and all. So overall, we have planted so far about 31,500 trees in these districts. Many of them were in about 13,000 or so were in the first phase, but majority of them have been in the second phase in here. Over time, what we have done is, we really wanted to learn lessons of what constitutes successful plantation of this tree in the community. where do you plant, how do you get community buy-in to own these plants so that they protect them and cherish them and take full advantage of them. So community engagement has been the key. And so there are three areas where we have made these plantation. One is at the domestic household level, that people in their houses are planting it. Then we are planting it in the communal areas and all. This could be a village setting and all, where this is planted, or along the roadsides and all. Or it can also be planted as a garden or in a field where a concentration of moringa trees are planted and all. So all of these, and we are learning various lessons of it. The tree, as we said, is indigenous to our part of the population. It grows very well, and we are having some quite remarkable success, which I will tell you about. So all these plantations, since we want to learn the lessons of this, has been very successful. This has been geotagged through the GIS. More than 90% plants have been revisited. Our success rate in the phase 1, we learned a lot, but majority of our trees have been planted in phase 2, and learning from the lessons of phase 1, we have a remarkable success rate in the phase 2. So in the phase 2, so far, about 93% of our trees have survived, and we have certain lessons that we have learned out of these. How do we develop the pull of this? Because it's easy to plant trees, but what we want is ownership in the community and all. So for that, what we have done is that we have done multiple educational sessions in the community, telling people about the potential uses of this. How can you use the leaves of these? How do you use the roots of these? How do you use the flowers? How do you use the pods? How can you clean water from this tree and all? So all of this has been developed in local language. Those of us who are familiar, in the US and in Europe, now moringa and its products are highly cherished. And overall in the world, there is $6 billion worth of trade that happens in moringa and moringa products and all. Unfortunately, out of this, India has about a $3 billion share of moringa product exports. Pakistan, unfortunately, has almost none. And before we come to export, we really feel that at least the domestic consumption needs to increase, because the plant is indigenous in here with the high rates of malnutrition. This could be a thing where we where we not only help mitigate the environmental challenges with its greenery and all the positive effects on the soil and ecosystem, but it's a symbiotic relationship such that it also improves the health of the people. In order to do this, we have developed in local Sindhi language, we have developed various moringa food recipes and an introductory video of this. I'll just show you this quick video. It's a small video, but it's in Sindhi language, but I hope it'll give you a flavor.
स्वांजड़ो एक मुनफरिद बूटो आहे जेको इंसानियत जे लाइ बेशुमार ख़ूबियुनि सां मालामाल आहे। हिन वण सां ग़िज़ाई क़िल्लत वारनि इलाइक़नि जी तक़दीर बदिलाए सघिजे थी। दुनिया में शायदि ई का अहिड़ी खुराक हुजे जंहिं में अकेले सिर्फ़ बेशुमार ग़िज़ाई ख़ासियतूं मौजूद हुजनि। तंहिं करे हिन वण खे जादुई, डॉक्टर या करिश्माती वण बि चयो वेंदो आहे। सुहांजड़ो तमाम तेज़ी सां फुटंदड़ ऐं वधंदड़ वण आहे। इहो तिबी ऐं सनती अहमियत जो मालिक पिणु आहे। सुहांजड़े जी ख़ासि सुञाणप इन मां हासिल थींदड़ अछे रंग जे ॿिजनि जी आहे। सुहांजड़ो सभिनी हिस्सनि खे ग़िज़ा जे तौरु इस्तेमालु करे सघिजे थो। इन जे मेवे खे फरियूं चवंदा आहिनि, जेके भाॼी ऐं आचार ठाहिण जे कमु ईंदियूं आहिनि। साॻी तरह इन जा गुल ऐं मिठड़ियूं बि भाॼी जे तौरु पचाइण जे कमु ईंदियूं आहिनि। सुहांजणे जी पहाड़ियुनि खे मूरियूं चइबो आहे, जेके पिणु आम मूरियुनि जी जाइ ते पचाइण ऐं आचार ठाहिण जे लाइ इस्तेमालु कयूं वेंदियूं आहिनि। इन जी मूरियुनि मां ठहंदड़ आचार ज़ाइके में निहायती लज़ीज़ ऐं तवानाई बख़्श हूंदो आहे। दुनिया में सभ खां वधीक ॿियनि तेलनि जे मुक़ाबले पैदा करे थो। ॿिजनि जो पाउडर पाणी साफ़ करण जे कमु पिणु अची सघे थो।
So you guys saw that, what we did in here is that in local language, this is a tree that is indigenous to these areas, but its use has been lost over the past few decades. So we want to reintroduce its use in here. You saw how different, how we are in local language, we are telling people about this and how it can be used to purify water, to, different parts of it, how it can be consumed and all. So the challenges that we had were low survival rate at the household level initially, the water supply for plants, insufficient protection of plants from damage by animals, procurements of moringa plants. All these were lessons that were learned in the phase 1. And as I showed you, we have been remarkably successful in the second phase. We are, there is a strong component of impact assessment of plantation on community and environment. We are doing soil and water testing. This is being done by a private fertilizer company. Impact on soil of these trees. And we are going to do a before after, so meaning 1 year. So basically before planting these trees, and then 1 year after that, we will collect and we'll see what impact on environment has this had. The project has been really a hit project. It has been taken by the media. Voice of America featured this. BBC News featured this. Our project in here, how we are doing this in a way that not only fixes environment, but also impacts on malnutrition. So it has been featured in multiple newspapers, multiple online portals, BBC, Voice of America and all. So where do we see going? So the first thing is that, we have learned a lot of lessons from this. We really think that moringa is a very useful resource. Lessons of our project can be scaled up to the rest of the rural Sindh, Balochistan and southern Punjab. We are in touch with the government for this. Basically, the vision is that no household in areas with the high malnutrition setting should be without a moringa tree. The local name of moringa, I should tell for people interested, is Sohanjana or Sohanjano in Sindhi and all. Then moringa leaves, flowers and pods need to be reintroduced into the diet of our people on daily basis. And then what we really would like is moringa trees to be adapted into the billion tree tsunami projects so that, we can find an indigenous solution to our environmental challenges and to malnutrition. I would welcome questions and comments. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asad, for this excellent presentation on this very compelling topic. Last but not the least, the final presentation is on civil society engagement by Mr. Jamiluddin, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Aga Khan Rural Support Program. He has rich experience of working in diverse settings ranging from South Asia and Central Asia to East Africa. Mr. Jamil, kindly share your presentation.
Honorable guests, colleagues from Acadian and Habitat, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Good morning and a good evening to those people who are joining us from a different time zone. Before talking about the topic of my presentation, let me begin by saying a few words about the Akhan Foundation's Global Community Climate Resilience Framework, which we use as a guiding document for our program interventions. Somehow I can't manage my slides. Let me try to take you to the next slide. Yes. So there are three basic pillars of this particular framework. The first one is local understanding and ownership, resilience through adaptation, and a resilience through mitigations. I think I'll not get into the details of each pillar, rather than I think would emphasize that our cross-cutting theme has been gender and community engagement as far as our work under community climate resilience related work is concerned. At KRSP, we have mainly worked in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral, especially with the rural communities, and have benefited almost all households across Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral, except for Diamond district, where our programming has been a bit thin. We give primacy to the people and their abilities. Our approach is based on the belief that local communities have tremendous potential to plan and manage their own development once they are organized and provided access to necessary skills and capital. With this belief, over the last 4 decades, KRSP has fostered a community-driven development structure comprising of village and women organizations and local support organizations in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral. These civil society institutions are central to what KRSP has done. Rather, they are the leaders at every stage of the project cycle, whereby KRSP has only acted as a catalyst. The village and women organization, as well as their representatives and umbrella organization, what we call them LSOs, have worked on a range of development interventions. But given today's topic, I will only highlight 3 key areas. These areas are community managed land development, agroforestry, what we call it social forestry, green and renewable energy projects. Let me start by giving a few examples out of these 3 areas from the real field work that we have undertaken over the decades with the rural communities of Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral. The first example is of a village organization of 60 households, which in early 80s dug a 1,600 feet long tunnel through a rocky mountain deep in Karakoram ranges and brought 7,000 canals of barren land under irrigation. The second community from another village distributed the vast and new land brought under irrigation from a newly constructed channel equally among every household, and set aside 60 canals of land for the women organization members who have established a fruit orchard where they have planted apple, apricot, and cherry trees intercropped with fodder. Another village community, again in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral, is lifting water from the channel and have planted thousands of trees above the channel, thanks to a micro-hydro power station operated and owned by the village organization. So these 3 examples cover the gist of my presentation. And let me quickly take you through the remaining slides where I'll be giving an aggregated picture of what we have done in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral around these three themes. As I mentioned, village and women organizations and LSOs have been central to what we have been doing. As my colleagues Nawab and Ono also mentioned, that community engagement has been central to Acadian's work, and AKRSP has been pioneer in introducing a community-driven development approach, which was replicated in other parts of AKRSP and adapted in other Acadian areas in Central Asia as well as in Africa. So we have fostered around 5,000 village and women organizations and have aggregated them to 85 legally registered local support organizations in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral. Now, these civil society institutions under the three themes that I have mentioned have worked on different irrigation schemes whereby they have either constructed or rehabilitated existing schemes or constructed new siphon and pipe irrigation projects to bring barren land under irrigation and then afforestation cover, thereby combating desertification. Agroforestry plantation supported to meet timber and fuel needs of community, thereby reducing burden on natural forest. If we talk about an aggregated figure, around 1,500 irrigation schemes have brought under irrigation over 9,000 hectares of new land. I'll also show a couple of pictures later on. And these communities have planted over 35 million forest trees with a survival rate of 75%. These are forest trees. I think the land brought under irrigation that also has had around 5 million fruit trees, especially cherries, apricot, and apples. This is one of the pictures where I have tried to show before and after sort of an effect of one of the examples that I quoted earlier. I think the first picture is about a barren land before that tunnel was dug. And later on, it is the impact of a green patch on the same land. I think we are really excited to be working with 10 billion tree tsunami related project very recently. Together with the government's forest department in Gilgit-Baltistan. And so far, we have been able to help the local support organization to plant around 3.6 million forest trees of different species. In addition, around 26 forest nurseries have been established in all districts of Gilgit-Baltistan to produce samplings for blood plantation under the 10 billion tree tsunami project. The third and final area is renewable energy. I think under this particular theme, what we have done is that we have worked with village and women organizations and local support organizations to divert this water from different streams and have helped them to establish micro and mini hydel projects. As a result, I think our model has been what you call it, has been a pioneer in terms of introducing new carbon trading opportunities under what we call it clean development mechanism under Kyoto protocol. And also, I think our community model, which we call it utility companies model, has also been replicated. Under this particular theme, we have helped communities to establish 331 microhydels with a capacity of 27 megawatt, and which is benefiting around 124,000 households. These are some of the pictures. And this last slide is about the recognition of our work, the community-driven work that we have done in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral. The first one was Green Oscars, SDN Award, received in 2004 for the microhydel work that we have done mainly in Chitral. and then Global Development Award for Most Innovative Development Project in 2006. I think I'll stop here with the final sentence that whatever we have done in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral, the communities have been central to the development interventions that we have undertaken, right from the planning stage to the ownership stage. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions later on.
Thank you, Jamil sir, for the very informative presentation. Now let's move to the question and answer sessions. We have 15 minutes for this session, and there are a good number of questions we have received. We will try to accommodate most of them. And the first question would be, Samra, can you pose the first question, please?
Sure. I would kindly request the CEO of World Habitat, Mr. David Ireland, to answer this question. The question is, what could be some incentives for housing construction in rapidly growing urban slums, especially in big cities like Karachi, Lahore, and Peshawar? Who could be the key players, government, civil society, etc., that could play a part and look at it from humanistic lens to address the quality of life issue? Are there any models or success stories from other regions to replicate in our context? Yes, David Ireland is kindly requested to answer this question.
Thank you, Simra. I think one of the most interesting developments in informal settlements has been the community land trusts. So community land trusts are a system where the ownership of the land is shared amongst the whole community, and people own their individual homes. And it was first used in an informal settlement in Puerto Rico, and is now being adopted in various cities in Latin America. And I think what has been quite inspirational about these developments is the shared ownership of the land. Makes it possible for people to raise money to provide infrastructure and to make improvements on their own homes. So I think there's lots of exciting ways of improving community or improving informal settlements, but that is the one which I think has really got the potential, and it would be great to see some adaptation of that in Pakistan and elsewhere in South Asia.
Thank you, David. We have got the second question, and that is, one good way of managing environmental waste is this RRR model: reduce, recycle, and reuse. Are there any community example, particularly from Gilgit-Baltistan, that has been successful so far? So I would refer this question to Jamil. Thank you. Jamil Saab, I'm sure you are able to.
I think as for RRR are concerned, I think what good example is plantation of poplar trees below the irrigation channel, whereby I think you can regenerate poplar tree and it reduces pressure on natural resources, right? Using this particular product for making furnitures or used as a fuel wood rather than, I think, natural wood. That can be one example. I think that I remember right now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jamil, for the answer. The next question, I would divert it to Mr. Ono. The question is, lack of construction standards in mountainous regions is creating major environmental issues. On the other hand, green buildings are just too expensive. What can be done and what incentives can be offered to ensure green construction in mountainous regions of Pakistan? What policies civil society society and private sector initiatives can be taken to mitigate this?
Thank you, Samran. It's an excellent question, and it's a big challenge because it's true that green construction is seen as expensive and a luxury, but it's also a necessity because construction, in particular the use of concrete, is one of the major sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the world. We have no choice but to address it. So at akah and AKDN, we do two things. First of all, the AKDN has set itself a net zero carbon goal, and ourselves, in order to reach that, because we own and operate and build lots of buildings, including in mountainous areas, we need to find a way to do it better. So akah actually has a global green construction expert who is providing support to all units, and our Pakistan unit is the most advanced, and Nawab Saab is part of the Prime Minister's task force working on green construction. What we're trying to do is to innovate. And the way we'd like to innovate is to work on new designs that also go back to traditional approaches in terms of use of material, because the key for green construction is that you use the right material and therefore don't create the burden on the environment that would be there. We're making some progress. This is, of course, an expensive building. We're building the FFB building in Gilgit city itself, and it will be LEED Platinum certified. To build a LEED Platinum certified building in Gilgit is a revolution in itself. But we are also working on the little schools, the community health centers, and of course, very importantly, the homes, and see how we can improve the use of material. This is a moving space, but we can make a lot of progress doing good work and good research. And I also wanted just to say on the reuse and recycle, for years, akah has been running school hygiene and school safety programs. School kids are a major driver of change because they still listen and they inspire their parents. So it's a great idea to use reuse, recycle, and in those programs, and we will definitely pick that up. And I want to thank the person asking that question. Thanks, Samra.
Thank you so much, Ono. Now, before we go to the next question, Jawad Ali Khan Saab, you want to say something or any question? You have raised your hand. Jawad Khan Saab.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that actually UN Habitat Ministry of Climate Change has created body of 3 institutions: UN Habitat, Aga Khan Agency for Habitat, and NUSP University. So we are working on the green building guidelines, and this also includes our intervention and our research in the area of green housing in the mountainous region, as well as in all ecosystems of Pakistan. So this is one area. On squatter settlements, we have been requested by the Ministry of Housing and Works to develop a strategy, and we are working, and we are trying to find out a solution that the people living in these squatter settlements can become part of the 5 million housing program, because the housing from the informal housing to formal housing delivery system, because probably this is the best opportunity for Pakistan really to jointly put their minds together and try to see how this challenge can be addressed. So, and again, recycling and reuse, we do not, UN Habitat doesn't call waste as a waste, it calls it as a resource. So we have integrated resource recovery center. We did put up one pilot in Islamabad in 2014, and now it has expanded to more than 15 such facilities through adoption by different agencies and the housing societies. So I believe there is a lot of potential to jointly keep working together and keeping this platform useful for promoting protection, and because it is the decade of action, and our joint initiative building partnerships will lead to certainly the solutions for decade of action and to overcome the challenges. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question is quite straightforward. What are the current risks to ecosystem in Gilgit-Baltistan, and what is their severity? So I would really request Nawab Saab and Jamil Saab to have a joint response to this question.
Nawab Saab, you go ahead, please. So I can add on later on.
Thank you, Jamil. That's a great question. As we see that Ono has also mentioned during his presentation, the various challenges we are facing, especially the climate-induced disasters, the magnitude and its frequency has increased multiple times, and it's felt more in the mountain areas. We have seen glove issues, we have seen flood issues, we have seen heavy rains and snow avalanches. So this is impacting the existing forests, the human settlements, and directly, indirectly impacting the ecosystem. At the same time, the northern area of Pakistan, over 90% of the population is dependent on fuel wood. So that's putting a lot of pressure on the natural forest as well as the green areas. So this is certainly a major area of concern. And you would see that only 9% of the Gilgit-Baltistan area is covered with forest, which is very small, and it's depleting day by day. But hopefully with the great programs of the government supported by AKDN institutions, and other development institutions, we are trying to increase the forest cover in this area. Thank you.
Just a small addition. I think another major risk is Gilgit-Baltistan is concerned, given the fact that a lot of tourists are coming in and land under use. I think one estimate is that only 3% of Gilgit-Baltistan's land can be used for irrigation and other, what you call it, productive purposes. As a result, I think a lot of people, especially, if we see the growth related polls, a lot of people are constructing haphazard buildings, guest houses, small hotels, and all that. So the green spaces that we are talking about, the plantation that we are talking about right now, that X number of forest trees or fruit trees were planted, I think gradually they can go away if a lot of pressure is there as far as what you call it, typical mass tourism is concerned. So down the road, maybe, I think we need to work on improving the awareness around maybe high value tourism, or some sort of other strategies whereby I think we plan the construction rather than maybe allowing everyone to do haphazard constructions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nawab and Mr. Jamil, for the comprehensive answers. The next question is from Jose's presentation, so I would kindly request him to address this. Has the impressive work carried out in Wuhan for promoting people-oriented spaces in any way contributed to the curtailment of pandemic outbreak there?
No, thanks a lot for the question. And I understand that is the relation of public space and the pandemics and the situation. And actually was quite interesting when we started the collaboration with them is for the first time approaching communities to the co-design of the public space. I think that was quite interesting. When we did a community participation workshop was something that was very important for them to gather the information from the communities. And actually what happened as in the rest of the world, the first action was to close accessibility to public space. And this is happening in many cities and is still happening in some contexts. But then they realized that public space are quite important for health well-being also. We are talking about mental well-being. So it's like later, it was an increase of the use of public space and green spaces in the city. The good thing is the situation actually improved a lot. Now it's almost back to normal. So this is information that we have, but at least what has demonstrated during the pandemic is green spaces and public spaces are fundamental for the physical and the mental well-being of a population living in cities. And this is related to a lot of quality of life. In other examples, we have seen that actually there is an increase of the people going to green spaces that previous to the pandemic era. No, so it's we have in Habitat certain guidelines on specific on the contribution of public spaces to the pandemic. We have seen also that it was very important to guarantee physical distance and to keep the businesses going on and operating, and also the functioning of the city, but also related to for instance, temporary health facilities during the pandemic. No, so it's only to summarize, in the case of Wuhan, I think they have recovered, they have controlled the pandemic. They have seen the value of public space. Now we are initiating normal activities with them. Now we are focusing on child-friendly special guidelines. But it's what has demonstrated around the world is the importance of green spaces for against the pandemic, or at least to adapt of the current situation. Over.
Thank you, Jose, for the detailed answer. And this is going to be our last question. We have one more question. And that is from Dr. Asad. Can moringa be planted in areas other than coastal areas, especially mountain areas?
Thank you. So yeah, typically what is said is that moringa otherwise is a very resilient plant, but it just doesn't do well when the temperature drops below 0 degrees Celsius and all. So while there are exceptions, some trees survive, but the natural habitat is basically anywhere where the temperature stays above at least 1 degree Celsius and all. That's where typically it is described that it works well. Of course, not just the coastal areas, but all of the sandy, or where there is more kind of a sandy land. So the entire Sindh, Balochistan, rural or southern Punjab, and even northern Punjab area is very suited for this. It's not that it absolutely cannot be in the higher altitude areas where it goes sub-zero, but the natural place for it is this. So I think at individual level, one could still have trees in the Gilgit-Baltistan areas as well.
Thank you, Dr. Ali, for the response. Now we will end our question and answer session here. Apologies to other attendees. We will not be able to accommodate all the questions in the interest of time. Next, we would request Mr. Hafiz Chairli to share the concluding remarks on this seminar. Mr. Hafiz is the president for His Highness Aga Khan Council for Pakistan and possesses diverse experiences in the field of climate responsive architecture, community development, environment, habitat planning, and climate change. He has also served in various Acadian governance-related roles for more than 26 years. Mr. Hafiz Ali, please share your concluding remarks. Mr. Hafiz, kindly unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable representative from the Ministry of Climate Change, respected members of government, distinguished speakers and participants. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. I want to start by congratulating the Ministry of Climate Change on the completion of the first phase of 10 billion tree tsunami project. Plantation of 1 billion trees in the first phase of this initiative is a great step towards climate resilience in Pakistan. The agencies and institutions of the Aga Khan Development Network, while demonstrating environmental stewardship, have embraced climate change and the environment as the core strategic priorities in the development mandates across the globe. In Pakistan too, from intervening in the high rugged mountain areas to the low-lying coastal plains, environmental considerations remain the cornerstone of the range of the development work carried out by the AKDN. Modern lifestyles and technological advances have introduced many conveniences, but some have contributed to our environmental degradation that threatens the lives of our future generations. In many of the areas where AKDN works, climate change compounds the risk of natural disasters, resulting in the loss of lives and livelihoods. AKDN is committed to protecting and restoring ecosystem while improving the quality of lives and millions of lives people that we serve. AKDN takes a holistic approach in mitigating disaster risk and proactively protecting the environment. The government of Pakistan has always displayed global leadership in advancing ecosystem conservation and protection, and AKDN considers itself a proud partner. The Ministry of Climate Change has played a vital role in devising strategies to combat climate change and giving it the voice to make it a mainstream issue affecting lives and livelihoods. Of particular significance are its efforts for ensuring multi-stakeholder engagement and participation, including that of civil society in various development sectors. The synergies hold immense promise to steer Pakistan towards climate resilient development. AKDN, we look forward to continuing this meaningful partnership and exploring new ways for fostering an enabling environment for multi-stakeholder engagement and actions. I'm grateful and thankful to all the speakers for participating in the seminar today and enlightening us with their wisdom and insight. Thank you all.
Thank you, Hafiz Sherali, President, the His Highness Khan Council for Pakistan, for your kind remarks. Last, to formally conclude today's gathering, we would request Mr. akah.pakistan, the CEO of Khan Foundation Pakistan. Mr. Akhtar has extensive experience of leading organizations in rural development, focusing on enterprise development, civil society, and access to education and health services. Mr. Akah, over to you.
Honorable Irfan Tariq, representative of Ministry of Climate Change, Excellencies, respected partners, President Hafiz Sherali, and most valued guests, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, good morning and good afternoon. It's a great honor to have you all here today. We are very much proud to be celebrating the World Environment Day, and we are proud to be a long-term partner with the Government of Pakistan and Ministry of Climate Change in addressing climate change-related challenges. I would like to congratulate Honorable Malik Amin Aslam and the Ministry of Climate Change for hosting the World Environment Day, which is a great achievement, I must say. And also he deserves a big appreciation for his persistent commitment towards climate change agenda. And we have already witnessed some great achievements. A report by IUCN, WWF, and FAO revealed that the billion tree tsunami was a success story, where plant survival rate is more than 80%. 10 billion tree tsunami has already achieved 1 billion trees. Other initiatives of the current government to mitigate the impact of climate change includes construction of new dams, launch of green Eurobond scheme, a Recharge Pakistan project, protected area initiatives, introduction of electric vehicle, green energy, and restoration of ecosystems, particularly in national forests and wetland areas. All these are amazing initiatives, and Malik Saab and Ministry of Climate Change deserve a big appreciation, a big congratulations. With renewed focus on climate agenda, the Khan Development Network has become increasingly conscious of the impact its operations have on the environment. For decades, our development agenda in Pakistan has incorporated the preservation of natural resources and climate change. These activities have taken many forms, from the return to productive use of degraded lands, tree planting initiatives, energy efficient stoves, and climate adaptation measures that range from installation of early warning systems and construction of protective infrastructure to building community resilience through softer disaster risk management initiatives. We are complementing these climate change targeted activities with broader climate sensitive initiatives, such as promoting waste management practices, green energy and green jobs, and so many others. On behalf of Akhan Agency for Habitat, Akhan Development Network, UN Habitat and World Habitat Awards, and other partner organizations, and on my own behalf, I extend my deepest thanks to Honorable Malik Amin Aslam for providing us this opportunity to celebrate World Environment Day. I extend my deepest thanks to respected colleagues from Ministry of Climate Change, other ministries and provinces. My deepest thanks to respected speakers. We really enjoyed so many, very interesting presentations. There were so many questions, but we were unable to ask all questions, but definitely we will share with our speakers. Our thanks to highly valued partners and guests for your time and for your intellectual contribution and for joining us in celebrating the World Environment Day. We are very grateful for your participation. Even like this cannot happen overnight. It requires planning and a bird's eye for details. So we have been fortunate enough to have a very motivated and dedicated colleagues from Akhan Agency for Habitat who did amazing job in organizing this event. Big congratulations and big thanks to all colleagues from Akhan Agency for Habitat and all Acadian colleagues who are part of this organization. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you so much, Akhtar Saab, for the kind remarks. We again extend our kindest gratitude to all the speakers and attendees. We do hope that this was a learning opportunity with important takeaways which would help individuals, institutions, and Pakistan at large for ecosystem improvement. The recording of this seminar will be available on the social media platforms of the Aga Khan Agency for Habitat. We hope you had a pleasant evening. Stay safe and have a good rest of the day. Goodbye and Allah Hafiz.